Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this online defense at Maastricht University. Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which Seethu Mariyam Christopher will defend the academic thesis, Intelligent Toys for Physical and Cognitive Assessment. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Honorable Pro-Rector, esteemed members of the Corona, my colleagues, my dear family and friends. It's an honor and a privilege to stand before you today to defend my thesis on intelligent toys for physical and cognitive assessments. I would like to start by showing you a couple of interesting stats. This is a graph showing the estimated change in adult to elderly population over the years. You can see from the graph how the share of elderly to adult population is estimated to almost double from 2000 to 2030. This leads to a huge shortage of caregivers for the elderly. It is estimated that by 2030, there will be a shortage of more than 150,000 caregivers for the elderly. Here is another stat for you. 59 million children will be out of school by 2030 because of shortage of teachers. That is, 1 out of 3 of our children will not be able to attend school because there aren't enough teachers available to support them. So the question we want to ask is, can technology help the elderly and children in this anticipated future demographic reality? If we look at the duties that caregivers and teachers perform, we can see that they spend a significant portion of their time performing assessments. Moreover, not only are standardized clinical assessments time-consuming, but they are also stressful for the participants. So, can we make do without assessments? Not really. Assessments are required for a multitude of reasons, like predicting important life outcomes, gaining insights into various capabilities, and creating personalized learning plans. Assessments are required for early detection of ailments and interventions. Think about, for example, a delay in the language development of a child or dementia in the elderly. So the question is, can technology help improve the way we do assessments? One of the ways in which assessments can be made better is by making them automated. This helps with the shortage of teachers and caregivers, but automation does not really help with stress. Embedded the assessments within games, that is, serious games, brings a play aspect to the assessment that can help the participants focus less on the assessment part and the stress associated with it. But most serious games are created to be played on computers, which increases the screen time for children, and for the elderly, it will require them to learn a new technology. So we need something tangible as well. This is what we propose: assessment devices that combine all three. We have proposed 2 such devices: intelligent activity dice to measure physical performance and intelligent maze to measure cognitive functioning. Let's dive into each of the devices now. First, let's look at the intelligent activity dice. We created intelligent activity dice by integrating an embedded computer and sensors into an off-the-shelf activity dice from WebFits. It has an edge length of 20 centimeters and can be easily grasped and thrown. The activity dice has a Wi-Fi connection to a PC for data collection and analysis for data. The data collected during the activities are also stored within the dice. The main purpose of using an activity dice was that the elderly are already familiar with it. This is a picture from one of the earlier days at the Seniorum Centrum that we're working with for the development of our game devices. The elderly are seen here playing with children using an activity dice. And we got our idea of an intelligent activity dice from here. We conducted 2 pilot studies with healthy adults using the intelligent activity dice. This is the experimental setup used for the studies. During the sessions, participants were asked to throw the dice while sitting on a chair of height 45 centimeter. A seated position is chosen here to restrict any contribution from the lower part of the participant's body in the throw. Furthermore, the seated position is favored to mimic the conditions of those elderly who cannot stand safely or do not have full control of their lower limbs. Once the dice leaves the hands of the participants after a throw, it follows a ballistic trajectory. The trajectory of the dice is marked with red dots in the video. This principle helps us extract variables from the dice that enables us to characterize the performance of the person's throw. The question is, what variables can we extract from the sensors that we embedded in the dice? This figure shows the accelerometer data from the sensor inside the dice. As you can see, there are 3 distinct regions in this figure. Before throw phase, where the dice is still being touched and accelerated by the human player. Thrown phase, when the dice is flying without physical contact. And the hit and roll phase, where the dice makes contact with the ground. We are mainly interested in the first 2 phases. From this data, we extract 3 different variables. Time of flight, which shows how long the dice is in the air during a throw. Initial velocity, velocity at the time of throw. And the number of turns, which is the number of rotations that the dice performs while the dice is in the thrown phase. Now, the question is, from these variables extracted from the intelligent activity dice, can we derive physical performance metrics? Different metrics that we looked at are described in my thesis. For the sake of brevity, let's dive into just the range of motion today. For this, 14 healthy participants were asked to perform 8 different types of throws with free wrist and restricted wrist in a study. 8 women and 6 men from the undergrad program at the university participated in this study. The different types of throwing conditions are shown here. In the free wrist condition, the participants' wrists are free to move and are not restricted in any way. In the non-physical mode, the participants are asked to try not to move their wrist as much as possible while throwing. In the restricted wrist condition, the participants are physically restricted against motion using a wrist brace, Velcro bands, and a hand-shaped cut MDF board. On the right, you can see the restrictions used in the study. The wrists are restricted against abduction, adduction, flexion, extension, and pronation, supination movements. Participants were asked to throw free throws from the chest with and without targets, and throws with the rolling motion using the wrist with and without targets. Here are some of the results of the study. The graph on the left shows the results of the initial velocity variable. As you can see from the graphs, the velocity achieved using a free wrist is significantly higher than the velocity achieved using a restricted wrist. On the right side, you can see the graph of the number of turns variable. As you can see from the graphs, the number of turns achieved using a free wrist is significantly higher than the number of turns achieved using a restricted wrist. I would like to summarize now by showing a couple of interesting insights from the different studies using the intelligent activity dice. One of the interesting insights we saw was that the participants autonomously decided on a dice trajectory that would require the minimum amount of strength and initial kinetic energy, and that the intelligent activity dice was able to capture this information. Another insight was that the intelligent activity dice was as effective at capturing information as a video camera. While the intelligent activity dice extracted information about the physical performance, our next device extracts information about the cognitive functioning. To that extent, present my next device, Intelligent Maze. Intelligent Maze is a wooden maze toy for children. We consciously chose to design wooden maze toy because it's a toy that's used by children. We wanted to make sure we wanted to reduce the screen time for developing children while at the same time improving their spatial awareness. We are able to use a variety of boards to assess different cognitive skills within the maze, which are interchangeable and can be automatically detected. The current three different boards are exploration board, assignment board, and motor control board. The children uses a custom-made pen to move the ball within the maze. The pen has a magnetic tip which pulls a magnetic ball upwards towards the resistive screen. This enables us to track the movement of both the pen and the ball within the maze. Now again, the question here is, can the intelligent maze extract information regarding the cognitive capabilities of children? For this, we conducted a user study with 103 children from 4 different schools in the south of the Netherlands. We extracted 78 features from the intelligent maze, like distances covered, time spent, speed, percentage of maze covered based on spatial zones, etc. These features were then correlated against the test scores from 8 standard psychological tests, like Tower of London, paper maze, etc. This is an example of the data extracted from the assignment maze. The data plotted here has undergone data filtering process. Here, the child is instructed to move from the red star to the yellow star. The trajectory of the pen when the ball is in contact is plotted in green in this figure. This figure shows the exploration maze. Exploration maze is divided into 6 different spatial zones, which are shown here. This was done to see if the children found any areas more interesting than the others. A sample of data extracted in the exploration maze is shown in the figure. The data points in each zones are colored differently. The features are then extracted separately for each zone. We ran a couple of correlation analysis between the features extracted from the maze and the cognitive test scores, and one of those results are shown here. We found that there are correlations between the features like distances, distance features, speed features, and dead end features from the intelligent maze, and the cognitive test scores of the tests like Tower of London, raven colored progressive matrices, and verbal fluency task. Here in the table, stars indicate the statistical significance of the correlation. Let me summarize by showing a couple of interesting insights from our different studies using the intelligent maze now. We found that the features from the intelligent maze correlated with the tests measuring the following cognitive capabilities: visual spatial ability, problem solving, reasoning, working memory, planning ability, initiative taking, flexibility, and inhibition. It was observed that the performance on PM, which is the paper maze test, which measures visual spatial abilities and planning, had negative correlations to the distance traveled in the dead ends. A longer time spent within dead ends is significantly related to lower performance in paper maze and Tower of London, tests that are designed to measure planning, problem solving, and working memory. It was also found that children who have more problems with taking initiative traveled less and explored the intelligent maze less. Similarly, children who are more flexible traveled more in the non-dead end area. We also found that the children who have higher inhibition spend less time exploring the intelligent maze. It was found that the central area, zone 1, and the bottom left area, zone 3, were more interesting than the other zone. As you can see from the figure, zone 3 is a zone that has a very interesting looking dead end. Exploring zone 1 and zone 3 was associated with the higher score in Tower of London and FPT test and a lower score on initiative taking scale, which means that the children who scored high in planning spent a lot of inactive time in zone 1 instead of actively moving around it. Zone 1 is the start of the maze. One could argue that the children were planning in this phase, and the children who were good at planning planned their moves ahead before exploring further. But follow-up research is required to conclusively claim that they were planning. We also found that the children who have higher inhibition visited the interesting looking dead end area in zone 3 less. In 99% of the cases, we were able to automatically extract features from the maze for evaluation without any human intervention. This means that the teachers and caregivers would not have to spend a lot of their time performing and evaluating assessment and thus freeing up their time. Our studies show that the features can be automatically extracted using our devices. Our results show that the automatic extraction using intelligent activity dice and the intelligent maze is time saving, and we can assess the physical performance and cognitive capabilities of the participants. Some of these features, like the number of rotations of the dice, time taken to complete tasks, or the speed with which they finish tasks in the assignment maze, are difficult to obtain through computer vision algorithms using a standard camera or even through a wearable sensor. These intelligent game devices are an affordable solution that can be used for everyday automated assessments. There are a variety of serious games with the intelligent toys that the elderly and children can play. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Before giving the word back to the prorector, I would like to wish all of you a happy Onam. It's an auspicious day here in Kerala, where I hail from, and we celebrate Onam today. I give the word back to the prorector now.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. We now will start with the opposition. The opposition will be opened by Professor Wienans. He's the chair of our assessment committee, and he's also a professor in machine reasoning here at Maastricht University.
So, thank you, Prorector, for introducing me. So, dear candidate.
Can I interrupt for a second? I cannot hear the questions because there is a lag between what I am hearing. I can hear two voices.
I just have started. Dear candidate. Dear Seethu.
Hi.
Hi, okay, good. I've read your thesis with much pleasure, and the thesis contains many interesting ideas and also insights. But I still have a couple of questions here. And the first one is about the beginning. It's about your title.
Oh, wait. I think I have to interrupt for one moment, sorry.
Yeah.
Seethu, do you have the live stream also opened?
I can't hear anything.
I will contact you in the chat.
Hi.
Yes. Can you hear me now, Seethu?
Oh, yeah, maybe that my laptop just totally froze. Yeah.
Yes. How is the sound now?
My laptop froze. Give me a second. I can't see anything.
Can you see me on in Zoom? Oh, she just logged out. I hope she logs back in. Seems we have a short technical interruption. We are also gonna call her. 1 second, please. Hello, Seethu. Welcome back.
Hi, sorry.
No problem. Is the sound working good now?
Yes, everything is. Yeah, I have.
Great.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
That's no problem.
Thank you
Then
so much.
we can proceed.
well, welcome back. And Professor Wienans was just starting with his question. Professor Wienans, please proceed.
Yeah, so also in view of time, my compliments, but I will continue with my question.
Thank you so much. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. I would simply start with the beginning, and this is about your title. And the title is Intelligent Toys for Physical and Cognitive Assessment. But my question is basically, why are your toys intelligent? Why do you call them intelligent? Aren't they only some data gathering devices, and the intelligence is happening somewhere else? So why did you call your toys intelligent, or is this simply a marketing trick?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. Here, you are able to, with these devices, you are able to find cognitive and physical aspects of a participant without any form of human intervention. And it's also able to compare and tell you how much with the device itself plus the assessment together, data analysis would be an intelligent device, not just like the device itself, because the device itself would just be an instrumented activity device, I guess. But then when we add in also the data analysis that is happening in the side in another PC, and then that gives you an aspect of physical performance of an individual or the cognitive aspect of a child, then it would be called an intelligent device and not just an instrumented device like
Okay.
this.
So to make it clear, the toy itself is not intelligent. It is the whole environment, the whole software package, that makes it intelligent.
Yeah, because so if there are multiple definitions of intelligence, I guess it is able to solve one aspect of this huge problem that a human is not required for doing an assessment at all. You place the device in front of the participant. You can place it in a home setting or inside a caregiver setting or in school, and then it frees up a lot of time for the teachers and the caregivers to focus on other aspects. And then it's gathering the information about the child, and then it's doing a whole analysis on the data that it's gathering, and then you can check against other tests and give you a result and give you on the curve where your child would be on a particular aspect. So like just the device, no, but together I would call it intelligent.
Okay. If I may, Paul Hector, to ask a second question. Okay. And I would like to continue here a little bit. Because one of the reasons that you introduce these devices, and especially the intelligent dice, is also to make the assessment fun. Because you could integrate it in a kind of game setting. So the elderly would also enjoy the assessment. So my question is, would they still enjoy it after playing the game, or the third time, or the fourth time, or the fifth time? Do you have any ideas about that, and how would you solve that problem? How would you prevent that your game would be boring? So.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so the device itself is pretty modular and extendable. So if you give the device with only, for example, 3 maze patterns, then obviously it becomes boring after a period of time. But the advantage of this device is that it can detect up to 24 different patterns. And then if you rotate the maze patterns that you're using, then you have a longer period of time before it becomes boring, and then a lot of maze patterns that you can use.
Yeah.
With the dice.
May I interrupt, because you're now talking about the maze, huh? I believe that, yeah. And now for the dice.
Yeah. So for the dice, right now, it has like 6 sides and you have 6 different activities for each side. The software is also extendable, and in the hardware you are using like plastic slots in which you can enter the activities for each side, and these are changeable. Like you can change those activities with one set of 6, like one set 6 comes together, and then you can add those for one activity, and then in the software you can just change the activity. Like there are a couple of activities that you can choose from. So if you choose that, then those 6 set of activities will be chosen. Again, it is extendable, and then you can add as much as you want onto the dice, and then you can rotate the activities that you're doing. So the dice will automatically detect which side it's thrown on and which activity it needs to play, and then depending on that, the activity that is being played by the dice changes.
Yeah, dear candidate, thank you for your answers. And then I think also in view of time, I will cease my questioning.
Yes, thank you very much. The opposition will be continued by Professor Wilbeck. Professor Wilbeck is a member of the assessment committee and is here the professor in data fusion and intelligent interaction at Maastricht University.
Mr. Prorector, thank you for introducing me. Esteemed doctoral candidate, dear Seethu, it was a pleasure to read your thesis. I compliment you with the good work, especially the extensive description of the evaluation protocols. Despite this good impression your work makes, I'm still left with some questions that I want to discuss with you. And the first one is about applicability, because as we know, that in modern computer science, exploitation of scientific results is becoming more important. And indeed, your work is application-oriented. But as we know, the devil is hiding in the details. And in your work, you showed how to automatically extract many features. Can you explain your vision how the professionals should use those features to assess the test subjects? Is there some post-processing needing? What is the cognitive load needed for the interpretation of the results?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and thank you for the question. Yes, the devices do need processing afterwards. So the feature that the data that's extracted from the maze, for example, has lots of noise in it, and then the software automatically cleans up and filters the data. And from this data, we look at different features, for example, like the distances traveled, which we thought would be interesting from the cognitive side of things. And then as a professional, you would just have to like switch on the device and ask the participant to play with it. So right now, the professional have to enter the device. It's not able to automatically detect the person that's playing with the device, for example. That is something that would need to be added in a future version. But right now that you would have to like manually say, okay, this is subject 1. And then you get all the data of the subject 1 in a folder, and then the processing is done automatically, right? And then it gives you the data and the features. And after the features are done, currently the analysis part is done, like a person has to say, okay, please analyze the features that are extracted from the dice with existing test scores of cognitive tests. But if you look at it, a human trying to manually evaluate the scores for like 100 students would take a really long time, whereas in this case, they would just have to select, okay, I want to compare the features from the dice to this 8 different tests of 100 subjects, and then it would just take like half an hour or so. So it does free up a lot of their time, but of course, there needs to be a bit of human input from the professional side as well.
So just to continue this discussion, let's consider the intelligent maze. We have the features, so we perform just the assessment of one child. We have the distance traveled, we have the number of dead ends, we have the time spent in each zones, and some other features. So with those features, what do the professional is doing? How he or she can interpret the results?
Well, so we have not conducted like detailed analysis to say, okay, this is what this score on the cognitive, on the intelligent maze say about the cognitive capabilities. So this is more of an exploratory research where we wanted to see the possibilities with such a device. So it is interesting to see that the DICE is correlating with cognitive test scores and the different cognitions, but you would have to actually do more explicit research with tests that you would want to measure and see what the DICE is able, what the maze is able to perform.
Okay, thank you for your answer. In due to of time, I think I will stop right here.
Yes, thank you very much. The opposition will now be continued by Professor Masthoff. Professor Masthoff is a member of the assessment committee and the chair of interaction technology at Utrecht University.
Dear candidate, I read your thesis with interest and like the creativity in it. I have a couple of questions. So the first one I would like to ask is related to the stealth aspect of your work, because you call it the stealth assessment. And I think it's also related to your proposition number 2, which says a watched man never plays. And I'll leave the rest of the text out for now. So in the proposition, you basically say that if you put people on the camera, they're not going to, act naturally. And therefore, you're hoping that by doing stealth assessments, using the toys like the dice, for example, you could get more accurate measurements of what's going on. But how does this play out ethically? I mean, you have added in your conclusion that you would tell participants that they were being watched through the dice, but if you tell them that they're being watched, will they still play? So is not your solution there contradictory with your own proposition?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and thank you for the question. So stealth does not really mean that we do not tell the participants that their data is being gathered, right? That's not ethical to do such a study. So of course, that we would inform them and we would get the informed consent. So this is something that we have also observed. Like if you put something on the elderly or if they are aware that they're being watched, then it sorts of affects their performance. Just like my proposition also says. So our idea is that if the assessment is within like a playing device or with is inside a play environment, that they would soon forget about the assessment part because they are having fun playing with the device. Like, okay, even if when they start, like they have these okay, I am being assessed part in their mind. Once they start playing and once they're like into the play itself, they would soon forget that they are being watched, right? Like, and it's not like it does not have any privacy concerns as such. Like with the video, there would also be privacy issues. And also with GDPR, then there would be problems with how the data is stored, how private that is. But with this, no personal information is stored. It's just the performance on a game device. And once they start to play and enjoy, then they soon forget about the assessment.
If you are storing if you're storing your assessment with the device, with the name of the person, which you will need in order to be able to do something with the assessment, you actually are storing personal data according to the GDPR. So I don't think that's completely 100% correct. I do agree with you that it's less sensitive than having videos assigned to it, perhaps. So
Yeah, so that is something we should think about in the next version, perhaps, because we would like to have the device also automatically identify the participant. So currently, no personal information is stored, but if you want to make it better and make it fully automized,
if you want to use
yes.
it for something, you will have to know who was using it.
Yes, so
otherwise
that
you
is something.
do of the assessment.
Yes, that is something that we should solve for the future, definitely.
Then, secondly, in your chapters, you do quite a lot of correlation analysis. Yes, and so typically what you do is you have the features of the maze or of the ball, and you have the existing ways of assessing these things. And there's multiple ways of assessing these things, and each of them has multiple questions. So your thesis is quite full with big tables, where we have on the one hand the features of your thing, and on the other hand, all the different things one was querying with the original assessments. What's a potential danger of this extensive exploration you're doing for the validity of your work?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so one of the dangers is that I have a lot of features, and then the results that we get from the analysis might be spurious. So one of the ways in which I've tried to reduce is that I run an initial analysis first to look at interesting features from the maze, right? So I don't want to confuse the results much. So I run an initial analysis to sort of do a data selection and only pick those variables which I think are interesting.
So when you do this initial analysis, when you then pick the variables, do you then gather new data afterwards?
No, so I only include those columns which were found to be interesting in the initial analysis.
Okay, so in the same data, so you have data, you first look which ones look interesting, and then you only do the analysis on the ones where you have seen in the data that they looked interesting. What kind of
so in the initial
validity?
Sorry.
Do you not think that might also be problematic for validity? Because if you look at the data, you say, oh, that one looks interesting because it's higher. You might be focusing on a spurious result and then say, I'm just going to look at those things because they might get significant. Is that
but so the initial so in the initial analysis, I am not as restricted. So I use a lower alpha value. So then I get more. So I would like to include as much results I find interesting from an initial analysis, and then do a more restrictive analysis later with those features that I found interesting in the initial analysis.
But on the same
data? It's on the same data, but with a different alpha value. So then, since the second one is a bit more restrictive with the lower alpha value, then I am trying not to include as much as spurious results as.
Okay, just continue a little bit, because even with that, and you look at the table, you still have quite a lot of things you're comparing to each other. So what could have been done? I mean, if you wanted to make those results more valid for the future, suppose I'm not going to say you're going to do that, yes, but suppose not a PhD student wanted to continue the work, what would need to be done to make sure that what you're finding is actually correct?
So there are statistical adjustments that can be done before the analysis is performed to make sure that our data is valid. And because since I'm running a lot of analysis on the data, but I did not do that since it's more of a exploratory study. And
so
I just wanted to see what was interesting. Yes.
So you've done the exploratory study. What if another person wanted to continue? What could they do?
For example, one of like you can do I don't remember the name, but there is like some corrections that you can apply to the data before you do the analysis, and then they can do that. But then obviously the relationship that they find between these features might not be as high as I found.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe getting some new data might be a better answer, but maybe do another experiment. But I guess And then finally, I have a very short question, if I may.
Very short.
Very short. What's the advantage of using your method compared to using serious games on computers? Because obviously with a serious game on a computer, you can more often update it. You might keep the kid more interested, perhaps, because there's changes to it. What's the advantage of what you're doing?
Yeah, so the main advantage would be that screen time is bad for developing children. So with the computer, you can't really remove the screen and have them play the game, right? So that's why we wanted to move away from using computers. And for the elderly, at least the elderly that there are right now are not really familiar with using computers. Like when we are older, we probably might not have that much of an issue, but currently, yeah, they're not. It's a new technology. They have to learn how to use it. So we want to move away from using a computer. But the digital games on computers have some advantages, mainly that it can be updated over time and it's highly versatile and modular. But most of that is solved because it's our device can also be updated because it's a software and the assessment is being done in there. You can also update the software. So we do bring some of the advantages of the computer games to a physical device. I guess that would be the advantage of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The opposition will now be continued by Professor Skubic. She is the director of the Center of Elderly Care and Rehabilitation Technology and is all the way logged in from the middle of the night in the University of Missouri.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. And I want to thank also our candidate for a very interesting and well-written thesis. So I have a question about the DICE, in particular, because of the elderly experiments and trying this, and the intent for this to be used for an older adult population. So the goal of this, if I understand, is to create an automatic assessment that reduces the stress of the individual being assessed. I'm wondering about the use of the dice in terms of whether somebody has to throw it consistently the same way and whether that would create stress, for instance. Would they get instruction on how to throw it, or do you just offer it to them and they would throw it? If you gave it to them 3 times to throw, would they always throw it the same way? If you have somebody throw it versus 1 hand or 2 hands, would that give you differences in the assessment that would make it then difficult to compare and generalize across different populations? And the way children would use it versus older adults, does that make a difference in terms of how you perform the assessment?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for the question and thank you for the kind words. So yes, how you perform the throws would affect how the data looks like. So a one-handed throw would definitely be different from a two-handed throw. The second part is, so we did 2 studies in which we performed some throws in which the participants were given instructions on how to throw, and some in which the participants are not given any instructions, like they are free to throw as they like, except for the fact that they have to hold the dice straight when they start. Okay, so and also age has a factor. How children would hold the dice and throw the dice would be totally different from how the elderly performs the throws. Currently, we only selected a couple of those throws to see the possibilities of using this dice for analyzing physical performance. There are a lot of possibilities with the dice and a lot of different throws that can be assessed using the dice as well. We would have to do more extensive studies to see the differences between that. What we can say conclusively from the studies that we conducted is that we are able to differentiate between, for example, if a person is throwing overhead versus a person is not throwing overhead. So what we have seen from from our visits to the elderly care seniorum centrum is that those elderly who are more enthusiastic try to perform overhead throws, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to see whether the dice is able to differentiate between an overhead throw and a throw that is different. We also saw that a lot of elderly who are seated tend to perform underhanded throw with a single hand. But we did not include that in the current study because we wanted to stay consistent and have the participants use both hands. And obviously, all of these are with healthy participants. We would have to conduct a study with elderly and have them perform maybe throws with instructions and versus throws without instruction at all to see whether the dice is able to actually differentiate between these. On an individual basis, if a person is asked to throw the dice 3 times consecutively without any instructions, I doubt they would be doing the same throws each time. But if we would want the same throws, I think we would have to give some sort of instructions to the participant, and that's one of the reasons why we included targets. So if we use the dice in a game which has like targets, okay, we ask the participant to throw it at a target, so it hits the target. So then even there is some form of consistency between the throws because the participant is always trying to hit the target. I guess. I hope I answered your question.
I know I threw a bunch of questions at you all at once. So I guess the general idea here, though, is how does that affect the actual assessment if you have an inconsistency in the way people are throwing? And I guess also, how does it affect the generalizability? Do you think that might be a problem, or is there a way to get around that?
So the first thing would be if you're comparing the performance of one person over time, if there is any change in performance, then obviously there will be a difference between the data gathered the previous time and the data that is being gathered currently, right? The way that they're performing is, for example, the strength is lower, or they're not able to rotate their wrist as much as possible yesterday versus today. So if that trend is continuing, then we would have to do some sort of intervention and say, okay, something is not going right here. Maybe we should perform an extensive assessment with a caretaker or with a researcher. So the DICE is mainly doing a very affordable first step in like making sure that, okay, we are aware that something is happening, that change in performance has happened, and like an intervention should happen currently. And that is how we would envision the DICE. Something that they can use every day, something that they are playing with, and if we see any change in the performance, we are aware of it, or the caretakers are aware of it.
Okay, thank you. I think in the interest of time, I'll pass it on to the next person.
Yes, thank you very much. I will keep all the introductions short because we have still 3 members of the opposition waiting to ask their questions. So this will now be continued by Dr. Meijer here from Maastricht University.
Yes, thanks a lot. Dear candidate, first of all, my compliments for a very nice thesis. I'll save the other compliments for later. I have some questions about your metric or your approach to physical performance. So you've used the DICE to assess physical performance with the aim for, aiding elderly or assessments of elderly at some point. And first of all, I was curious, how did you end up with this particular task? Who did you consult? How did you, because if you look at the problems that elderly face, they have fall problems, they have loss of strength. Why this particular task, and then resulting from that, this particular toy?
Esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. Thank you for your kind words. We have been doing the creation. We have been creating the intelligent toys along with the caretakers and teachers from our senior centrum in Germany. And we got the idea of the dice from the activities that the elderly and children were doing together there. So they have one day in a week where the children come to the elderly care center and they perform some sort of activities together. And the dice was sort of a solution by the caretakers there, which would enable the elderly to interact, have the children and elderly interact in a fun way. So usually there is a problem that like children don't know how to interact well with the elderly. Like there is a sort of period in which where you are still figuring it out, and the caretakers found this to be a solution which enables interaction between children and elderly, which we thought was interesting. But the activity dice that they were using would not be performing any sort of assessment.
Okay.
So
and
that's where we got the idea.
Sorry for interrupting. Did you formalize this in any way? Because it could also be that it's just this particular center that uses this approach and it doesn't generalize to sort of the general elderly population in Germany or Europe or the world. Did you consider this, or is this a first start?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, this is a first start. We have only been working with this one center and another center in Netherlands, but that is mainly for children. But dice is mostly a universal toy. So if I have to guess, I think it's general, but I have not
I could not find it in your
any
thesis.
studies beyond these two.
Yeah, hence my question. Yeah, you got me really enthusiastic about your studies, especially in the introduction, where you sort of describe the state of the art and also describe that in terms of assessments, there are 4 different categories. So observational research, standard tests, stealth via PC games, and using wearables. So I got excited and I thought, well, you're going to come with a solution that sort of, well, covers the pitfalls of all these individual approaches and then come with one comprehensive approach that tackles some of the problems of these other approaches. And I was kind of disappointed that you make this cube and then you come back to a very simple task, throwing the dice. Did you consider, and maybe it's a first step, making it more interesting, actually trying to monitor the place situation that you just described and try to retrieve numbers from that? And it's probably going to be much more complex numbers. It's probably going to be hard to compare, but I think that's the really wicked problem. You want to assess people in their natural environment using these types of this type of technology, but then you quickly run into the trouble of how do you define the appropriate parameter? And what often happens is, and basically you've done that too, is that we go back to the standard test situations and we only added sensors. So I guess my question also refers to the first question: where is the real intelligence, or when will it come?
Thank you for the question. So, as I have described in my thesis, also there are problems with the currently existing methods, right? For example, adding sensors would give us a lot more precise information about how the elderly are performing than using a dice. But the problem with adding sensors on the body is that the elderly often find it like cumbersome, and then even when we attach like stickers on the body of the elderly, they want to remove it and they're not really comfortable with it. So this is from our experience as well. So
sorry to interrupt. I guess my question is more, given that you have sensors in the dice, if you would have the people play with the dice in a sort of natural way, could you extract features from that also are indicative of their good or poor performance? And I guess given the time, maybe a very brief answer. That's
yeah. So if we want to do that, then we would have to bring some form of structure into their natural environment, of course. But we want to make the structure such that they're not very uncomfortable with it. For example, if you embed this in a serious game setting where they are given a target and asked to throw it at the target, for example, then we would be like, we are not taking them away from the natural environment, but we are also enabling the dice to be used in such an environment, I guess.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'm happy with your answers.
Thank you. The opposition now will continue by Professor Borgans.
Yes, dear candidate, also congratulations with your very interesting thesis. I think it's a very important topic, but also it's clear that like there's still a long way to go to really make what you have in mind. And so therefore I would like to continue a bit with the previous question. So if you go to a toy shop, you see an awful lot of different toys, and for one reason or the other, you have chosen for a dice and you have chosen for a maze. And so my question would be, now with all your with the experience that you got writing this thesis, if you would continue in this approach, would you continue with the dice and would you continue with the maze, or would you now think that other toys more suited for this idea?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question and thank you for your kind words. I would continue definitely with the dice and the maze also, but maybe a miniaturized version of the dice would also be more suited, which would give us a bit more aspects about the cognitive functioning as well. But I would combine it with a smart game in which the participants are throwing the dice and playing a game as well. So a bit more comprehensive functioning capability can be derived from the same game. I am pretty happy with the devices. I don't think I would change that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Then the opposition will now be finalized by Dr. Karel.
Okay, candidates, thank you very much for your interesting thesis. That's nicely structured. And I would like to take you to two figures, figure 4.19 and figure 4.21. And if I look at these figures, what I'm seeing there is that you have in figure 4.19, you have actually 6 cases combined there, the chest, overhead, underhand, the free, and 2 targets there. And you're looking at the number of turns, but in figure 4.21, you kind of have the same, but I'm trying to understand what the connection is between those figures. So could you enlighten me about that and what the difference is?
Esteemed opponent, thank you for the question and thank you for the kind words. So in figure 4.19, okay, so the number of turns for all type of throws are just grouped together in this figure. So it just shows you all the values with the standard error as the error bars indicated. In figure 4.21, this is the result of a 2-case honestly significant difference procedure, which compares the means between the only 3 types of throws. So all the chest throws, but the chest throws, free chest throws that are at target of 1.5 meter and chest throws that are at target 2 meter. All of them are combined, and the means of those kind of throws are compared against the overhead throws and underhand throws. And from the results of the 2-case HSD study, we see that the means of the chest throw, the number of turns means for all kinds of chest throw is significantly different from overhead throw or underhand throw, which means that we can say with 95% at 95% confidence that if a person is using a chest throw, from the number of turns extracted from the dice, we would be able to differentiate between a person executing a chest throw versus other kind of throw,
Okay.
which is not apparent from figure 4.119.
Yeah, so if I understand it correctly, the mean in figure 4.21 is basically the same as the mean in 4.19, but then average over the free throw, the target at 1.5 and a target at 2 meter.
Yeah, that is correct.
that
So
correct?
all
Okay.
throws, yes.
And you agree with me that in figure 4.19, for the overhead row, the standard error for those individual ones is smaller, and actually the means are quite close together when compared to the underhead row. So if I would then average those three categories, then I would expect that even with the overhead row, the standard error would even become smaller and smaller compared to the underhand one, because the underhand one is already a bigger standard error and the means differ more. But then if I turn to the next page and look at figure 4.21, I see that the standard errors for the over and underhead rows are kind of the same. So how can you explain that?
I know. So in the first figure, the outliers are also included, but when they perform a please adjust the
Seethu Mariyam, Christopher, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I request that you and the audience await the results of our deliberations and our return.
Can I finish?
And usually we now automatically transfer to another room.
Okay.
please proceed.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm kind of waiting for the "you may all now rise," because usually our beadle would now let us all step up, but then you only see our front and not our face. So let's proceed. So Seethu Mariyam Christopher, the degree committee here present online, has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense, and in view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Weiss is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Seethu, do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present online, I hereby confer upon you, Seethu Mariyam Christopher, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, you will soon receive the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the supervisors affixed with the official seal of the university shown by the beadle.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I'm now handing over to Dr. Möckel to address a few words.
Many thanks. And also congratulations from my side.
Thank you.
So yeah, dear Seethu, dear Dr. Christopher, congratulations on your new title, which is really the result of many years of persistent work. I'm very, very proud of you. Well done. When you think about how things come to an end, you're also typically thinking a bit about how things actually have been started. I personally can still very well remember the applications that you sent when we had this job offer for a new PhD candidate that was really sticking out. You had already published your first papers together with your supervisor and had shown that you have the desire to become an independent scientist. We have also been working with on the labs of two people actually that I personally admire also a lot, Professor Auke Eisbert from EPFL and Professor Mark Yim, who is kind of the godfather of modular robotics. So someone I look very much up to. And so, yeah, it was not really that we, had to be further a lot convinced actually to invite you to join us at our department as Maastricht University to become a PhD candidate. And you probably also still remember when we started your PhD project, our first mission was to teach a elect modular robot to work. So we had a bunch of ups and downs, and what I really liked about you was that you kept, working, and everyone who works with robotics knows about all the additional challenges. It's not just a matter of algorithms and software, but there are also things like mechanical limitations, physics that you have to deal with, electronics that can overheat, and things like real-time control. And soon after that work, actually, we discovered another passion together, and we worked very closely together with caregivers and teachers when we worked on this development of instrumented toys, assessment tools for elderly and for children. And so, we worked actually very intensively, learned a lot. To remember when we came actually with our first ideas and solutions. And I'm entirely grateful actually to the teachers and caregivers who very patiently explained to us in a very nice form and a very patient form that the ideas actually we came up with were probably not that useful and that we should do a better job. But they also helped us a lot. And indeed, some of the ideas that you presented today, such as the instrumented dice, was a result of very intensive and very fruitful collaboration with these partners. Soon after, we discovered another great opportunity for collaborations, and this was with our dear colleagues, Professor Borkhans, Professor Schulz, Professor Herks here at Maastricht University. from whom we learned actually that they were also very interested and started already like a very exciting work on the instrumented maze for the assessment of cognitive abilities. And also here you are to be congratulated, because it was due to your hard work that we have been able to contribute actually to this collaboration, because it did a lot of work actually regarding the data analysis. And so, yeah, I would love to congratulate you again on this success, and which you would like to wish you actually success with all future endeavors that I'm sure you will pursue with a similar passion and persistence that you also have demonstrated during your PhD project. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Dear Dr. Christopher, also on behalf of Maastricht University and the Board of Deans, I congratulate you with the degree you have acquired. Usually we would now like to have a reception together, but you are far away from us, but you indicated you had a holiday today, so I'm sure there will be a very big party now, so very much congratulations. And with this, I thank the opposition for their efforts. Thank you for surviving all the technical difficulties, and I hereby declare the ceremony to be ended. Thank you very much.
Thank you.